This video is not really a happy one. Hello everybody, welcome back to Meddling in Antiquity. My name is Teray, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the passing of Sir Ian Holm and the influence of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit on me personally. So I am filming this the day of June 19th, Juneteenth, but I'm not going to be putting it up until the day everyone is seeing this, June 20th, simply out of respect for it being Juneteenth. And I don't want to detract away from other creators who are making videos specifically about Juneteenth. But for me, I really do feel like I need to share exactly the influence that Lord of the Rings has had on my life. Not just as a fan of the source material or the films, but also as a creative, as a writer. My first exposure to Lord of the Rings was at age 11, which I have talked about a little bit when I made my video, This Machine Kills Soups, where I talk about The Boys, which stars Karl Urban. Lord of the Rings is what sparked my love for Karl Urban, but also my love of fantasy, high fantasy, action, adventure, things like that. It gave me this really cool look at what high fantasy could be and what exactly it does for people, and that is something that I have carried with me through my entire life. I've watched all three of the originals, all three of the Hobbit films. I own all three of the originals on extended edition. I've watched them multiple times, films and the extra stuff. I own the documentary Ringers Lord of the Fans, narrated by Dominic Monaghan. I absolutely adore Lord of the Rings and the universe Tolkien created. I'm even playing in a D&D campaign themed around Lord of the Rings that is going to be DM'd by a very good friend of mine. And I'm listening to Dimension 20's Escape from the Bloodkeep, which is also a D&D. It's a D&D campaign based around the concept and inspired by Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of things that I wouldn't know about if I hadn't seen Lord of the Rings. Because how my brain works is I find new things to enjoy, especially in regards to pop culture, by networking through the actors that I really like. So if I really enjoy something, I'll go on IMDb and I'll jump through looking at those actors and I'll find the things that look like I'd really enjoy on their IMDb pages, and I'll be like, I'll pick that. Or if I see an actor that I enjoy from something else, I'll give that thing a shot, and usually I'll enjoy it simply because of that actor's presence usually indicates that it's something I'd enjoy. And The Lord of the Rings is a huge part of that for me. Lord of the Rings is the only reason I started watching Game of Thrones. I didn't know anyone who was in it except Sean Bean, and I loved Sean Bean as Boromir, and I thought that character was someone that was so incredible, and Boromir's development and how Sean Bean played it made me want to watch Game of Thrones, because I knew if I liked Sean Bean, I'd probably like Game of Thrones and him as Ned, and I did. I really enjoyed Game of Thrones. Without the Hobbit films, I wouldn't have watched The Almighty Johnsons, which is now one of my favorite comedy shows, because I wouldn't know who Dean O'Gorman was. And I wouldn't have automatically eyed that and thought like, oh, Dean O'Gorman's in that. He's funny. This looks like a good show. I wouldn't have watched the 2015 version of And Then There Were None, which stars Aidan Turner, who played Keeley in the Hobbit films. I Saw the Dead, which is a story about a grave robber telling his story of him becoming a grave robber, starring Dominic Monaghan, who I would not know existed unless I knew Lord of the Rings, because he plays Merry. So the films have really, and the people who were in them really shaped my taste in weird sci-fi, horror, fantasy things that I enjoy. I mean, like, that networking of actors has really shaped me now as an adult. And I mean, that's so important. I mean, to this channel, there are things on here that I've mentioned, that I've done videos about, that I would not know existed unless I knew those actors from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I mean, obviously, I am a big fan, as you can tell by these well-loved copies of The Hobbit, Fellowship, Two Towers, and Return of the King. But for me, generally, fantasy and science fiction and horror often served as kind of an emotional escape from everything else I was dealing with and everything else I am dealing with. And it's an escape for a lot of people. But around the time, but Lord of the Rings is something that is far more important to me than anything else, simply because the year after I was introduced to Lord of the Rings, I lost my father. It was Lord of the Rings was one of the first birthday presents I got from one of my best friends from junior high to now. And that was a connection we made. It was a connection I made with another one of my best friends from junior high to now. So it has also created a lot of friendships for me. It's something that I enjoy, just not on even on a that much of a personal level. I mean, this was one of my Christmas presents from my aunt and uncle. I have a journal that is the map to Erebor. I have the Hobbit feet slippers from our Gone But Not Forgotten Think Geek. And even this particular shirt, one of my first major embroidery projects was embroidering the map to Erebor from The Hobbit onto the back of this shirt. So, Lord of the Rings has influenced not only my personal life and my aesthetic, but also me as a writer. Tolkien's description of Bilbo's hobbit hole in The Hobbit served as a major inspiration for the prologue of the novel that I have been working on. That is kind of one of the major inspirations I looked at, and how that, just the introduction of the surrounding and making sure that everybody who is reading knows exactly what they're looking at and what they're supposed to see in their heads when they imagine Bilbo's hobbit hole, is something I found incredibly important in regards to setting the scene and the stage for the story that I'm creating, for the world that I'm writing. So Lord of the Rings has really influenced me in a lot of ways. And I think that is one of the main reasons why Ian Holm's death has really hit me the hardest of every celebrity death that we've dealt with in the past few years. I mean, there's really not much you can say that that everyone else hasn't said, but it is a franchise that has remained near and dear to my heart and always will. And the loss of Ian Holm is one that I feel very deeply. So I think that's gonna about wrap us up. rest in peace, Sir Ian Holm. You will be very missed. And I will see everybody on Monday for our next episode of Market Music. Bye.